Hello, hello, hello! You get glitter stitches and I get glitter stitches and our projects get glitter stitches today. I'm the Knitting Fairy Godmother and today we're having virtual book club. So how about if you go get your project and you can knit along while we talk about our book. And while you do that, I would like to invite you to join my knit letter. It's a once a week email filled with all things knitting, only knitting. We don't talk about anything else. And I send you glitter stitches right to your inbox. If you would like to sign up, you can do so at knittingfairygodmother.com under knit letter, and the link is in the bio. So let's talk about our book, Virtual Book Club. This is Mindful Thoughts for Makers, Connecting Head, Heart, and Hands by Ellie Beck. The chapter that we're reading today, this week, is The Quiet in the Making. And I want to show the picture because it shows an image of a woman on a park bench knitting. Or maybe it's a person, I don't know. But it's knitting and we're knitters, so that's pretty special. One of the sentences that she writes is, "In this ever busy world we live in," and it just reminded me of the Paul McCartney song, so I've got that like running on a loop in the back of my mind while I talk about this. The quiet. Okay. I find in our modern society that we have more screens, which means that we have more speakers and we have more noise. And that's just something that I have noticed in my own life. And it's not even so much like there's more traffic noise, it's that there's more noise within the home, the areas that we have control over, right? So that's the good news, that we have control over them. But something that also comes up for me when we're talking about quiet is that things that used to be analog have now had a screen added, which includes more noise added. So I know that at my gas station, I used to be able to pump gas and hear the birds and the natural sounds of being outside because gas stations are outside. And now every single pump has a screen with audio blaring at me. So even that quiet little snippet of natural time where I was accomplishing my errands by putting gas in my car has been taken away from the quiet. So I've had to reframe this, and now I think about quiet as a luxury. It's something that I've noticed in my life, and it's something that I've noticed in our collective culture. So I have to make deliberate choices to have quiet time. And when I first noticed this, that the outside was coming in from a noise perspective, it felt really uncomfortable for me to make the deliberate choice to put my phone away outside of my listening area or to turn it off. It felt really strange not to have a podcast on in the background or listening to music. But what I found is that when I made the deliberate choice to be in the quiet, it was hard in the beginning, but very quickly I was able to transition to feeling like luxury. And what I found is that in the quiet, all of my senses could expand, so I could hear things more clearly. Noises that I would normally not have noticed, I could sense, I could literally hear them. I noticed more things about the light and how the light played on my yarn. I was able to notice if I was clenching my jaw or if I was thirsty. Like, having the sensory noise removed meant that I was able to come back to myself, connect to myself a little bit more, and tune in, right? And one of the ways that I found to do that was to actively engage all of my 5 senses. Even noticing how my yarn felt in my hands, but also the weight of my yarn and my project on my lap, Or maybe I noticed that my shoulders were hunched up, and then I could have the decision to roll the shoulders down the back and literally release that tension. So those are some things that I've experimented with and really enjoyed using those tools. So now my habit is that every morning I knit in the quiet. And there's no noise, there's no audiobook, there's no podcast, there's no music. It is just me and my needles. And I can hear my needles clicking, and sometimes the yarn squeaks. And these are very precious moments for me. So Ellie Beck talks about inspiration from within, and that's kind of what I've been talking about, that when we remove the external noise, some of these inner thoughts, inner feelings, inner observations can bubble up because there's space. There is literally sensory bandwidth available to make these observations. And she goes on to talk about finding your internal gift. So she talks about the click of the knitting needles. Love that. The thrum and the whirl, the scratch of a pencil, the scrape of paint. Like, these are all sensory words and images, and like I want to touch it. I want to feel what that paint feels like. But this is an act of slowing down and taking in the small details. And then she talks about bringing quiet into a noisy world. So to learn through practice how creativity and being a mindful maker can slow your mind shows us ways to live in the quietness and find contentment in the quiet, mundane moments of our lives. So something else that I heard on a podcast recently is that, you know, humans are not built for speed. If we run, what's our max capacity for running? 15 miles, right? But 15 miles an hour, and that's like a top-notch athlete. That's not me who doesn't run speed. The maximum is 15 miles. But when we drive in the car, we're booming down the highway at 60 miles an hour, and we've developed skills to address that speed, but that's not biologically what we're built for. So to bring back the slow pace and the quiet and the observation, it's the essence of what she's talking about in this chapter. So she says, until you've tried this yourself, it might seem strange or too hard to do. But through regularly seeking the quiet in each day, you'll learn that you can take the quiet into the busyness of the world. Teaching yourself to tune into the stillness around you, perhaps watching a raindrop fall from a leaf, you'll find that you will continue to actively seek stillness and quiet when faced with a regular day of noisy, stressful moments. So, yeah, that's just chef's kiss, delicious and wonderful. And the ideas that she presents in the quiet. So then some other things that come up for me are, how do you create a quiet space? And it might be that you have some habits to change, and maybe it feels weird in the beginning. That's totally a possibility, and it's important that you experiment with it and see what the result is. And then another thing that comes up, of course, because we're in the pandemic, is how we use space. The space that you might normally have been used to in your making or to be quiet or by yourself might have changed. So then are there other possibilities for you to experiment with and try out these ideas? And then what does that look like for you? Because we have the entire latitude to create quiet in our lives. And maybe quiet for you is going for a walk outside and not necessarily knitting, but the quiet time you take outside will help your knitting. So marinate on all these ideas. It's so interesting. And if you have any sort of question or inspiration or idea, or even something that you've tried yourself, I'd love to hear it. Comment below. Until we talk next time, keep knitting and keep quiet.